Hi everyone, I hope you're having a really great day. I wanted, if I may, to share a few thoughts with you about how I feel therapists might be doing their business damage, even if unwittingly out there on social media. It starts with a long time ago, and the first time I properly knew anything about the internet was in about 1995, and that was at the time when, dial-up modems still existed. But what we could never have predicted at that time was where those early days of AOL and pay per minute and all of that would end up. So there I was. It was a cold and rainy day, a bit like today because it's cold and it's raining here. And I was sat reading. And reading at that time was the only way of gaining any information back then, of course. So I always had my head in a book, sometimes fictional, but often some sort of textbook or another. And there was my other half of the time who was studying IT and technology engineering. And he eagerly exclaimed, "Want to have a look at this?" pointing at his computer screen. And he then said, "Watch me argue with some of these idiot students on here." And so began my introduction to the world of the internet, which seemed to me to be such an exciting and wonderful place of connection. But on that rainy afternoon in rented accommodation, I watched in relative awe as he typed his argument into the screen. Type it. And within a few moments, people were commenting, seemingly real time. And not only that, but from other places around the UK. Now, what I didn't really understand as a pretty naive 20-year-old was it was also going to be my very first introduction into the world of oppositional, passive-aggressive, narcissistic, paranoidal and sociopathic kind of personality styles that just wanted to argue. So long gone are those infant days of message boards, and social media was not even a concept that anybody had particularly thought of, back then. But nowadays, even the most debate-adverse people find themselves engaging with online arguments. Everyone seems to suck up dubiously sourced opinions and other people's opinions like some giant kitchen roll. But there's a psychology to all of that, of course, because whenever is there not? People tend to argue on the internet for straightforward reasons. Often people aren't even trying to convince each other or other people to change their mind. They are in some way trying to be heard, doing like a performance, if you like, for the like-minded people. This is tribal, of course, and it goes way back to our ancestors when people felt the need to stick with their tribes in order to survive. But the thing is, in this day and age, there are so many people out there on the internet who are accessible to us that people feel the need to pronounce their viewpoints, proclaiming this and that very loudly. And invariably, there's going to be somebody else or thousands of someone else's who will come along to proclaim their own versions, or my opinion is better than yours. Again, people love belonging. It's part of that ancestral history. We, each of us, try to mark out our own little bit of the internet, our own territory, if you like, a bit like a garden. Woe betide anyone comes into our garden and orders us to have a redesign, because this is our territory and we will defend it. Again, it's very basic instincts. But the issue comes when we are so caught up in our own agenda, often sat perfectly quietly in our own living rooms, and our opinion can go out to literally thousands of potential readers. And what's more, once it's out there, it hardly ever gets deleted. So say you put something on Facebook or Twitter, and it has the potential of being seen by upwards of 250 million people. So that private thought that you had, that guy's an idiot, can easily become an undeletable public announcement. People will screenshot it, they'll send it to other people. They'll have conversations about it, and the same goes for anything that might be contentious to other people. And this brings me firmly to my point here today. The other day I was scrolling down my newsfeed, and on one of those colourful, eye-catching backgrounds came a question, a statement. Would you date a guy who had a COVID-19 vaccine? It made me stop and look closer. And I guess in a way, the poster of that question had got exactly what they wanted, some kind of reaction, and had sent a smoke signal out to all of the people who then could come along and either question the integrity of the post or who wholeheartedly state that no, they would never date a guy who had a vaccine. Oh, insert lots of exclamation marks, aghast noises, shocked expressions and all of that. But, and here's the real point, if I was looking for a level-headed, wonderfully non-judgmental therapist to work with me, or a life coach or a business coach or any other number of people that I might look to for help, I would simply not go to the one who publicly and outwardly hated vaccinated people. I just wouldn't. What I did was I scrolled on by and I put a little red marker there in my mind for the future. Don't even bother with her. I continued to scroll down my timeline, okay, and I came across a therapist who was spouting something or other to do with politics. Not interested. And to be honest, never going to book with them because of it. Another therapist talking about some very dubious conspiracy or another, which when challenged couldn't come up with any evidence. And to each their own on that, but I would never use them for therapy, ever. And someone blatantly slagging another therapist off. This is all in the same day, in the same kind of half an hour. And the most bizarre group posting about how new therapists shouldn't be on Facebook asking for advice. That one made no sense to me at all. I mean, unless you're literally come out of your mother born a therapist, then even you had to learn from somewhere. So therefore, that judgmental attitude is damaging and holds no place in a profession that's meant to be non-judgmental. And that's my point. Suffice to say, my list of whom not to work with is growing and getting bigger than the list of who to work with. And I'm pretty certain that I'm maybe one in thousands and thousands of other people who have seen those posts and made their mind up whether to work with those therapists or not. So if you want to be a busy, successful and thriving therapist, may I kindly recommend that you have a good old look at your timeline. And you ask yourself, if a client went on your timeline, would they be put off with how you present yourself? It's just a thought. Have a fab day, and I'll see you soon.